So the video on Americana is taking me a little longer than I had hoped to, just because, things have come up. But I still want to get out a video, and I thought, what could I talk about that would be, relatively short, relatively easy to put out? And I thought, why not do poetry? I read a lot of poetry in school, and since then I really haven't read much. And I liked it. I think it's a shame that, people don't read as much poetry as they used to. I think it's fun. Short, sweet, easy to digest. But I do think one of the problems with talking about poetry is that, there's a little bit of vocabulary. It's different from prose. You don't really need to understand the prose, the vocabulary behind prose. Like, everybody knows what a paragraph is. But, there are certain issues with poetry that I think we should get through first. Just a little background. And I thought that's what this video could be about. To that point, we have the question: what is iambic pentameter? So the first thing I think we talk about is what is pentameter, because pentameter is probably the easier of the two. So penta means 5, and meter is, I suppose, could be best to be described as the beat of a poem. In the same way that you have drums in music that go, that beat out the rhythm, you have that in poetry too, and we call that the meter. Meter is then measured in what are called poetic feet. So the foot can be a number of different things, but it is a combination of short and long syllables that get repeated over and over again to create the metrical foot. And it is these feet that there are 5 of, well, at least in pentameter. So in iambic pentameter, we have 5 metrical feet per line. Now, the iambic part of iambic pentameter is the indication of what kind of metrical foot it is, right? So an iamb is a short syllable followed by a long syllable. Different kinds of feet will be called different things. The most common is the iamb in English poetry, followed by the trochee, the dactyle, the anapest, and the spondee. But you don't have to memorize those. We can talk about those when we come across them in poetry. But for right now, the important one is the iamb, which is short, long. So now, when we bring it all together, we get iambic pentameter, which means that there are 5 iambs per line, and that's it. That's what iambic pentameter is. 5 short, long feet per line, repeated over and over. Of course, you might be wondering, how do you tell what is a long syllable versus a short syllable? And that one is a little more complicated. There are 2 ways of deciding, of figuring it out. One is to simply pay attention to how we pronounce words. Obviously, words with only 1 syllable, it's always going to be the long syllable. If there's only one, that's the long one. But if there are more than one, then we have to figure out which one is it. Because there's only going to be one per word. There's only 1 long syllable per word. There are some exceptions to this. Compound words, words that are made up of more than 1 word that are just smushed together. Each word that got smushed together will have its own. But in general, there's only 1 long syllable per word. So the best way to do this is obviously just get a hang of things, to practice it. For example, if we take the word emphasis, where is the emphasis in that? So emphasis, 3 syllables. We can put the stress on the first syllable, the second syllable, and the third syllable, see which one sounds right. So we have the first one, emphasis, the second one, emphasis, and the third one, emphasis. The second one, obviously wrong. The third one is closer. It's possible, but it's not how we would normally say it. We would normally say it the first way, emphasis, with the stress on the first syllable. And therefore, we know that the first syllable, M, is the long syllable. And you can do this with all words. You practice them, you get the hang of it, and it's probably how you should do it if you're reading a lot of poetry or writing a lot of poetry. But if you are just dabbling, the second way of figuring out which syllables are long and short is to just look it up in a dictionary. Most dictionaries will tell you which one is the long and short syllable. They'll have it bolded. The syllables, the long syllable will be bolded. And if you're just doing like a school project, that's probably good enough. So now that we know what iambic pentameter is, and we know what long and short syllables are, kind of, we can have an example of it. And I'll read you an example. The most famous example is Shakespeare's Sonnet 18. It's written in iambic pentameter, very clear. And yeah, I tried to find other examples of it, but it's remarkably hot. I personally found it difficult to find examples of iambic pentameter. There's a lot of iambic tetrameter or iambic hexameter, which is just different numbers of iambs per line. Tetrameter being 4, hexameter being 6. But pentameter, I think, is so specific to Shakespeare and Shakespeare's contemporaries that a lot of people outside of that time period don't really... I think they avoid it. You don't want to sound too Shakespearean, and I think if you use iambic pentameter, you do tend to sound very Shakespearean. But I'll read the sonnet, and then we can have a good example of iambic pentameter, and we can see the long and short syllables. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. It's a nice poem. It's a very simple poem. It's just about, it's a love poem to somebody and saying, no matter how old you get or when you die, we'll always know that you were beautiful because I wrote this poem for you. Very simple, very simplistic, very beautiful. Very famous for a reason. People like it. So, to recap, meter is the beat of a poem and is measured by the number of poetical feet per line. An iamb is a type of poetical foot made up of an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable, or short and then long, if you prefer. And there we go. A nice short video where we talk about a little poetry. And it's just something to get us through, something to get us by before we get to Americana, which I look forward to. So I hope you liked it. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, do all that jazz. You know what to do. And keep reading.